Welcome to the Good News Naija podcast, where we celebrate stories of Nigerians who are doing extraordinary things and making global waves. My name is Desmond Eboy. Hello.
Hi, how far?
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I think I've asked you at every single point that I've known you for an interview, and at every point they've not worked out. Did you feel like you needed to just get this done?
Yes.
And that's why you're here.
I was like, if I don't say yes this time to Desmond, he's never going to text me again. So I was just like, let's make it work. But that's not the only reason why I'm here. Like, it sounded like a good idea when you just gave me the summary of the podcast. So why not?
Okay, thank you. So it's actually a good idea because we're trying to spotlight the work that you've done in the media, in film, and also in building a number of things. So the first question I want to ask is, I've always been fascinated with the idea of Lagos and how Lagos has been the place that has pushed our different ambitions. You've had the opportunity to move out for school and come back to still build in Lagos, and I know you won the Future Awards a few years ago. But how has Lagos pushed your ambitions?
In many ways, when I first moved to Lagos, because context, I grew up in Jos, right? Spent my whole life in Jos. And anybody that lives in Jos and moves to Lagos knows that contrast is insane. So for me, like when I think the first thing I noticed, even as a, should I say teenager, was Lagos just drives you insane in a way where like you are forced to cope. There's noise everywhere. Everybody's trying to one up you. Like it just forces you to, for the lack of a better word, mature faster than you would normally. So I think that was just like my first experience with Lagos was, okay, I have to survive this place. Mm-hmm. And I always say it and people think I'm dramatic, but I feel like if you can survive in Lagos, you are off to a good start at surviving everywhere else. So in terms of pushing my ambition away from like just survival mode, Lagos gave me a lot of the opportunities that I have today. If I was still in Jos, I don't think I would be the kind of journalist that I wanted to be. I don't think I'll be the kind of filmmaker that I want to be. Even a lot of the successful journalists, artists, filmmakers out of Jos often have to come to Lagos or other parts of the country just so like they have that network and resources to fuel their ambition. All of this to say that Lagos is just a place that makes things happen. People are there, the network is there, the resources are there. There's everything that you need here. There's shege too, but like there's also everything you need to succeed.
You've gotten to like the peak of your media career.
Are you sure?
I mean, you've done everything that if a young person wants to dream in the media, like I would dream to attain the heights that you've attained, win the awards, be on a global news platform, do all of the things that you've done, start up a podcast, all of those things. There are things that I would want to do. But when you get to that peak, why not replicate what Lagos has done for you in other cities, like a place like Jos? Why is it impossible for us to see that replicated across? Because in my own, I told you, like off camera, I told you I wanted to retire as a teacher, start school. But then in my head, at every point when I have conversations with my mom, I'm like, how is it possible for the states to give me huge land so that I don't have to pay and then invest in that? That's my own personal goal when I'm thinking about it. So why are we not seeing a lot of that in the Nigerian context for people who are founders, who are building stuff?
It requires a lot of work and energy and resources and money to go and replicate something that works. Like ask all the people that are building Film Village in like Abeokuta and other places. It is a lot of money. It's a shit ton of resources that it's like, why would I go and replicate it somewhere else when I can just use what currently exists? That's just one out of many other reasons. Like I said, I don't have a lot of context, but like personally, if you were to ask me, why am I not, say, going back to Jos to come and do all the things that I've done, I don't have the capacity to go and scale in Jos. It's like starting from scratch. And anybody who knows how media works, especially the business of media, will tell you that, first of all, there's no existing successful model yet. Like the model that currently exists, there's no money making scheme out of it. Then you now want to go and replicate it in a difficult location where there's no evidence that you even skill. It's like, is that really a wise business decision? Like see, us creatives, it's passion that is to fuel all these things that we're saying, why can't we go and do it here? But like when you try to when you do the math, it's
You'll
like
be like, eh.
the math is not mathing, but like, yeah. So I guess just to answer your question in terms of why I'm not replicating all these things in other places, like I don't have the capacity and resources, and I don't think I even want to personally now. I'm very fine the way I am. Let me just stay where I am.
We both are in the media. I mean, now we're also now in film but I started my career in the media, radio, and television. But a lot of us in the media, I think I should even have a conversation with Awazi because she used to have a huge career on the radio. And then you see her doing stuff in tech now, and you see her doing other stuff. Why is it that a lot of us in the media, like the people that would typically call the media bosses, are moving from the media?
I can only speak for myself, I'm going to be honest. I don't know what's driving other people. I felt like with the media, I think first of all, I felt washed out. Like I was tired. It felt like I was replicating the same process over and over, doing the same thing over and over. And it's just like, as a creative, it's like at some point you're going to get bored. You want to try something new. You want new challenges. You want something that feels fun. Because by the time you're doing the same thing over and over and getting too comfortable, it starts to get less fun. So that was what it was for me, where I'd done, radio, TV production, like podcasting. I'd done like so much and I was repeating the same cycle for like 7 years. It's like, bro, at some point, like something has to give. So I kind of just stayed back from media a bit because I wanted to try something new. And like, I'm like, okay, I've told stories in conventional journalism. How else can I tell stories? And it was like, maybe I should try another industry and see what storytelling looks like. And of course, tech is continuously growing, and it just made perfect sense to enter in there. So that's what is driving me. I can't speak for like
So it's not the
anybody
money.
else. Oh, the money is also a huge part. No. But I promise you, like it wasn't money first, but 100%. And I think in my career, I've actually been lucky that the money that I got in journalism was fair compared to when I like talked to other journalists. So yes, it's a driving factor, but like it wasn't the main factor. But yeah, of course, money at some point. We all know that, at least for journalism specific, it's not like journalists in Nigeria are getting paid great money like that.
So for young people, so for me, my first job on radio, I was being paid 15,000, and people thought I was earning way more.
Well, yeah, because you're on the radio and everybody's hearing
Yeah.
your voice and they think you're popular. Yes.
So at the time, my mom would send me, like my mom would double my salary. She would send me
She'll send you
2
30K.
times my salary, 30K, and then the salary I was earning, which was like 45K. And that was how I was surviving in Lagos when I had just moved to Lagos.
wild.
But now it's harder to see, like a lot of people at that time. It was cool to see a lot of people do that because in 2016 everybody was driven by the passion. But now we don't see. When I listen to Lagos radio, you don't feel that much passion because a lot of the people that actually had the passion, they've now moved out and all of that. So for the people coming, how do you think we can preserve the media to attract some of the best people who truly want to do the work that is required for the media, which is tell stories, even if you're going for the format that is more entertaining as against educative or investigative. How do we make the media as hefty as it used to be, if that's the right word?
I don't even know that the media is not as hefty as it used to be. Is this thing where like there's an age-long battle like with creativity and sustainability for a business, and a lot of business owners and people in media now are like, do I want to be super creative or do I want like my business to die? And so I think what's going to help is if we're able to establish a sweet middle spot. Here's the thing, like this month, yeah, like where we want to be creative and do all the fun stuff on radio and TV, but like it's like how with filmmaking now. If you don't have money, you still can't do all those things. So what
You can beg.
How many people do you want? Every time you want to make a film, are you going to go and beg?
That's why I've not made a film this year.
You have to create a sustainable model such that maybe you make one film a year, or at least you are in pre-production once a year or something like that. So I think what I'm trying to say in summary is that I always tell people, right, when they say, oh, I want to be a TV producer, I want to be a journalist, I want to make films, my first question is always, are you sure? Because if you don't like it deep down, like if you don't have the passion, you're going to leave after 6 months. So I think what I'm trying to say is that we should try to encourage like people's inner passions. It's not even trying to make radio look attractive or this thing. It's like we have to make sure they genuinely care. Because that's what's going to keep them inside. If you don't care, if you are coming because it looks glamorous, maybe you heard Desmond on the radio and you think it's cool, you come in after 6 months, you will see that they are paying you how much salary. You will see that I have a lot of friends like I used to have a lot of friends on the radio where you see them on Instagram, they're going red carpets looking glamorous. You think that maybe it's one radio station that is funding them, but it's their money. My babe that works on the radio now, she's doing side gigs to keep things alive because she likes it. It is that passion of you liking it. So anyway, all of this to say that we have to teach media the way it was taught to us in the past about like the creativity, about liking what you do. That's what's going to keep us until we find a business model on the continent that works. But it's not by anything. People cannot be scammed. They're going to come in and realize that they were scammed and they are going to leave. They have to care about it from the jump. They have to be taught filmmaking in a way that makes them actually fall in love with it.
And I also think that we started the media from a place, because I know a lot of us who, when I was moving from Benin and I was approaching a lot of radio stations, I would always tell them that I can do it for free. I can do it for free. Like, oh, just get me a spot on the radio and all of that. And that was the case for a lot of people on the radio. So, and even a lot of the business owners now felt like if you decide to leave, we can get a replacement for you at way cheaper. So, and that's one of the reasons that it burned me out when I was on the radio, because at 2021, I was just like, this doesn't make sense. That I'm working 5 days a week as another job so that I can fund this, so that I can also fund this passion. So I just resigned on the 1st of January. And it was very, it was very wild, but then I guess it's what it is. So something else I'd like to ask is, you did mention that you've been lucky in your own journey. So how can we, for the person watching, how can we get to that point where that everybody somewhat feels lucky? What was your path to, because you might have done conventional radio and TV, but then most of the work that was spotlighted were more writing work, and then your work with the big CNN and all of that. So when did you realize that was the right path to go, and why?
I'm not going to lie. So I feel like luck has a good place to play. Because like there are many journalists like me. Like there's not, like when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, there's nothing special. It's the same journalism we're doing. But I think honestly, it was shamelessness for me. And I'm not even capping. When I first moved, because I did radio in the UK for a while and I really enjoyed this. But when I came to Nigeria, I did an internship. I don't know if I should mention the radio station, but I don't think I will. And like I immediately saw in just 4 months like what radio culture was like, and how like we were giving a lot of ourselves, but we weren't getting paid, we weren't getting appreciated. And I was like, yeah, I'm out. I'm not doing this shit. So when I realized that I could write, what I started doing was, I promised you this month, if I wrote 200 words, the way that I will put you on Twitter, I will put you on Instagram. There's this weird carousel things I used to do on my old Instagram. I will send it to family members. I'll put it on WhatsApp. Like and I was doing it every week because I used to write for free. Like I'll send emails to editors and be like, they'll say, oh, we don't pay contract. I say, no, don't worry. That thing you said about doing it for free, I will do it for free. It's fine. Let me do it. And then so every week I was always writing something and I would send it to everybody. It was just like I was doing it so much that people started to notice that there's one babe that is always posting stuff like this. Let's even check out her work. So that's how like my luck started. And then I put it on Twitter. That's why I said shamelessness. I was like, I think I remember the message was, please help me. Oh, I want to be a journalist, or I've written this. It was something so like I've been trying to find that tweet, but because I can't remember the exact phrasing, it was like, I want to be a journalist, please. I've written this, and this. You put like, and I was telling all my friends retweet. I was very shameless about it. Because remember, I'd come from the UK, convinced my parents that they should pay hefty school fees, and then I now came home to sit at home to be doing what? Like, I felt like I had to prove that I did not waste their money. So for me, it was a lot of shamelessness, making connections, and then I met Messia Bang, and I said, no, she even saw my tweets, and she was like, what? Why are you disgracing journalists? Why you? It was something along the lines of why are you behaving like this? And I was like, please help me. I was so shameless. So I told her what I needed. I needed a job. I need this. So she started introducing me to other journalists. When I write, I'll send to them. And you know how you are as a creative. You are busy. You cannot be babysitting a newbie. But they were very kind. The ones that I saw that were now answering me, and now hold their neck. I'll be like, I've written and now please help me share. Please this, that. So that when Stairs was now hiring, they were, I mean, normally you ask other guys, who should I hire? Everyone else said, there's one journalist babe that is always disturbing me. You guys should interview the babe. See, Desmond, that interview, I wore my best clothes. Guy, I was even, like, before, I was even telling my mom, see, before I went for the interview, should I print all the articles? She said, we don't do that anymore.
They'll be like, oh, I'll do interview afterwards.
Desmond, the one they don't ask me, I was answering on that because I was just like, that's why, like, I feel like it's just luck. There's no, or maybe I was too passionate about the craft, or maybe I was there, but I had a certain desperation that I see that is a little bit missing with creatives today. I was I was hungry for success, and so when I finally got that job, Desmond, there's no day I was not writing. The one they did not send me, I'll write because I felt like I had to prove. And so that's just how I continued over time. And I was always sharing. So at that time, the newsroom was very big on when you write an article. They wanted me to learn content marketing myself. So it's like you figure out how to like share it across different channels. What ways can you distribute it? That's how I started learning all of these things. And over time, I did not even know that. First of all, I did not have context. I mean, not like that. CNN was like, in West Africa, when I think about CNN, I thought about it as that big screen, all those people on TV. So when I
even when I was checking when I'd watched your culture custodian stuff, I was not like, oh, it's true.
Yes,
I promise you. And I work in the media, so all in my head for CNN is.
Yeah, you only think about BBC when you think about like in that context. And then she just sent me a message that, that I always see that every time you're always sharing articles, you're always writing something. Like, would you like to come and be interviewed to join CNN? I first looked the message. I said, I showed my mom. I said, please, can you just check if this message is there? I said, she's even asking me, would I like to? I said, when should I come, man? So, like, it was just a lot of, I guess, what I'm trying to say that for me, my path was unconventional. I think there was just a certain desperation that a lot of people saw. And I feel like a lot of people mistook it for, and maybe it's hard work, I don't know, but like they were like, because I was always up, taking journalism courses, like I was going the extra mile, I was doing the most. Now, like I think, and I'm like, I was actually doing the most. But like, that was it for me. And I was constantly sharing my work. I was also very shameless. I literally come on Twitter and be like, guys, please read it now. And now I only have 500 views now. Please, somebody come and, like, that was how I was. I was holding people's necks. And then I feel like that kind of, maybe not to that extent because mine was extreme, but like I feel like that kind of just putting in that extra work is a little bit missing today with creatives. And I say this because I see like, God, I don't want to sound like that old millennial auntie, but I see like a lot of younger creatives now where I think someone was telling me, was it 2 months ago? She was like, no, she wants to be an investigative journalist, though she can't come and be writing about one kind of news, something. And I had to be like, you have to start from somewhere. You think investigative journalism, you think you just jump inside it today. You have to show them that you can do even the smaller things first. So, and this is a pattern that I'm constantly seeing among new creatives, even with filmmaking. Someone was saying like, oh, she wants to do director, and she will just jump into director work like that. I'm like, no. You actually start first. You work on a set.
Can you become a director's assistant first?
Yeah, I'm like, but you have to work on a set first, see how it's done. Like that's. And maybe it's my network, the people I'm associating with, because I don't know why I'm always seeing this kind of people. But like that thing is missing where just the ability to be open-minded enough for you to try new things up until you get to where you are. Everybody wants to join the BBC today. Everybody wants to immediately become director or producer, but you're not willing to put in the work to get there. And again, this is not like the full picture. Of course, there are many other factors, but for me, it's like these are the small things that will contribute to you becoming a big name or getting to where you are. Like, don't be desperate like me. Mine was too much. But like honestly, like I feel like how you went to multi-choice, you did that training. Some people would have just been like, why am I not getting these gigs? After all, I've been on TV, I've been doing production. But like there's a certain level of work that you have to put in that I feel like is missing, that I'm just not seeing as much as before.
So, is there anything right now that feels right that you do for free?
For free.
Work. If you're approached, so you know the way you were writing.
Free.
I'm just saying. So you know the way you approached to you were writing those scripts and sending to some editors. Now, when you think about your whole career and where you are at, something that you write or do for free.
I think maybe something I'm genuinely like curious about. So right now, one of the things I'm trying to do more is script writing for film. I don't think I'm great at it. So if like somebody throws an opportunity at me and says, how far now, write a script, this like I should try my hands on it for free. Please don't cost me, not the one that someone now come and say you said it on Desmond's show. But like I feel like I will.
Everybody would be like, I think you can do it. I can pay for an editor to edit it at the end of the day.
No, yeah, but I think something I just have to be genuinely curious. I'm not great at it yet, because it's when I'm good at something I charge for it. So like I won't do rubbish. I will do my best, and I think I have small sense. I can make it work. So I would do, there's stuff that I would definitely do for free. I don't like saying it in public now. People will come and say, just come and do it for free. But yeah, script writing, maybe anything film related, because I'm still relatively new, trying to get the hang of it. So I think I would, like if you call me to come and do work on your set, I'll be very happy to come and do it. I will do assistance. Just call me.
Is film that hard?
To
when you think about it, because you've done all the work on you've done production work, you've done the writing work, and then you've also midwifed some of these things, like made sure that they come out, they're distributed, and which is what film really is. It's like, okay, ideation phase, and you try to develop it, and then you the pre-production phase, and then you produce, and then you distribute. Is it that hard for people to break into film, or do you think that people really need some form of education for film? Because I know some of the people who are excelling in film, the people who are making the big bucks in film do not necessarily have all the film school knowledge that some of us have, but they are the ones making it in the Nigerian context.
So when you say it's film that hard, I think it depends on the context. Like film is, for example, hard to break into. Like you know this better than me even. Like a lot of producers or directors will work with people they've worked with before. It's easier. I'm not coming to come and train someone to do one thing. So like in that context, it's hard to bring like, say a newbie like me who is just learning, who doesn't understand the ropes. Even me on my set, if I'm a producer, I would take someone that is experienced, because sharp will fit. Like, do you get? So in that context, it can be hard to break in, especially if you don't now know anybody, as with any other profession. But in general, we know that Nollywood is not where it's supposed to be. So in the context of like making global, whatever, all of that jazz, it is difficult. And then we know, let's be honest with ourselves, like the culture of film production is a little bit toxic. So there's that part again where like it makes all of this combined together is difficult. But to answer your question about like formal training, of course not. How many people are using the certificate that they got in school, the formal training for their work now? I feel like with film is one of those things where when you have like hands-on experience, nothing beats that. Like I would choose someone who has hands-on experience as a producer, for example, or a director's assistant, than someone who went to school to study that but does not have the experience. Nothing like beats that experience. It's great if it's both, fantastic. But like, yeah, you don't need formal training to do it. Formal training is great, it helps, but like if you know how to do it, you know how to do it now.
But what about what has happened to the culture of winging it? Because a lot of us, me
winging it, that's
no, I promise you.
Money,
no,
or whose budget?
let me clarify. So when I used to work on radio, and then when I got my first job at the consulting firm as a producer, I'd not done anything producing like related. But then I just kept bullshitting it, and then until I got the job, and then I was now committed enough to like. Sometimes I'll just reach out to SI was tired of me. I would reach out to SI. I'll reach out to my friend who worked in this just because I wanted, and then I'll Google stuff.
Yeah.
Because I was winging it at the time, and then I grew and became good at it. So I think,
Aren't we all winging it? Actually,
yeah,
let's
but
be
I
honest.
just think that there should be some room, or there's no room for winging it enough now.
Oh,
Or
okay.
how do you don't you think that there should be more space for winging it?
I think it depends on a lot of things, but in a way, I feel like at last we're all winging it. So, like to be fucking honest, sometimes I'm like, I've pitched the show idea, maybe the scale is different from the scale of the others, and I'm like, wait, what the fuck am I doing right now? Like in that context, I'm winging it because I haven't done anything in that scale. I'm coming, I'm guessing, I'm asking people. I guess it's different. Like, but I do agree with you that there should be, I guess, space for people to wing it. But like, it's harder now, especially if the project is, imagine it's a very big film production set. Maybe like you guys have limited shooting days. Is that the set that you now want to come and be winging and making mistakes?
What if you don't know?
What if you don't know?
Have you hired
You
somebody that
work
you
with, yeah. Okay. See, Desmond,
people
I
who
think
can
for
speak
me,
really great Englishes?
see, Desmond, for me, the way I approach winging it is if there's someone I'm hiring as a beginner, fresh from the start, you're going to have someone that you're shadowing. So in that context, the person will give you work that you can wing it, but there's more direction. And like it's not going to affect or impact the project in a big way. Because me too is someone that took a chance on me and I was winging it for at least a couple of years before I knew what I was doing. But I'd like to make sure that there's balance where I'm not giving you a role that you clearly are going to, I'm not going to make you produce my TV show when you've never had any production experience. I'm going to make you maybe the production assistant so you can work with someone that knows. In that context, if you like be winging the assistants, that's fine. You're not going to, and then you're going to learn and get to that level too. But I'm not going to put you, especially for a project that is high stakes. Do you want to put me in trouble? Anyway, all of this to say that there's definitely a space for winging it, but let's establish balance while we do that.
So what's your favorite work so far?
As in projects that I've worked on.
Like something that, like the first thing that crossed your mind now as you think about it.
Nothing
Like
crossed my mind.
something when you think about it, there's always going to be that first project like that you are the most proud of. And why? For me, it would be
Go on, go on.
for me to be producing the Future Awards, for example, because it felt like it was really huge, and then they could have easily said, "Let's outsource," but then they said, "Oh, he's been here for a couple of years. Let's allow him produce it," and I did it, and it was great. So, for you, what would that be? Why?
By the way, that's actually a big deal.
Thank you.
We all know that when it comes to events,
I almost died.
it's the ghetto. So for you to pull it off, no, well done. Actually, hats off to you. I could never. Favorite project? I don't have a favorite. I just have. I think, and this is cliche as fuck, but like it's usually the projects where someone comes to me and says, "Oh, thanks for doing that," because it actually helps me or it helped someone. It's not even the ones that, oh, she won award for something. Because like, so I guess in that context, maybe I think it's stories that I've done that people really appreciated, that I could see the impact. Because for the longest time when I started journalism, I'm like, this thing that I'm even doing safe, is it really moving the needle? So I once did a story when I was at Stairs about this community that had been living in smoke for like 25 years or something weird like that in Ogun State. I'm so sorry that I cannot remember the details. And like after a while, apparently the government showed up and stuff changed. And they sent me a message and they were like, thank you. So those kind of stories, like I will now be like, okay, it doesn't feel as bad as I'm just sitting down and I'm writing or I'm talking to a bunch of people. At CNN, it was stuff that moved the needle, like when we did like research on the NSAS investigation that eventually like popped out and came out. It's stuff that you could see that what you are doing is impactful somehow, no matter how small the impact is, even if it's just to bring attention to something. Those are the kind of things that I feel proud of, which is why it's frustrating when people are talking about my work. They're talking about like other things. I'm like, I don't really give a shit about all this ones. This is the one I care about. I care about like the film that I've made now. I'm really proud of it because first of all, it's the first one. It was done with minimal resources. And but it's also really good, like it's an impactful story. So those are the kind of things I tend to gravitate towards when it has done something for someone somewhere. Sha. God, I sound cliche, but yeah.
Yeah. So, and for you, you've done a number of things. You've done. Now you're starting with film, which I can't wait. I can't wait to see. We have Bleach because
I'm
it's
afraid.
the name is so catchy. The actors are really good. They are actors that I really would pay to
Yeah.
watch. Mao Yon, I would
Yeah.
watch her on stage. I've seen her on stage.
She's amazing.
I'm a fan of Rihanna, and I saw what's his name again?
Ginika Chukwu.
Ginika on that. Fade, I'm even watching something that she's on right now.
Is it that show that was one bit? That girl that was in your film. What's her name?
It's okay.
It's okay. That girl that is in that Fade's film.
Yeah.
That she's acting as Jeeps. If I see her, it's on site. That girl is just annoying me. She's stealing money. You're stealing money. You're still giving acting to people in school. If I catch her,
I love it. I should actually watch episode 3.
I've not watched episode 3 yet.
Episode
But
3.
what's wrong with that girl? It's
Drama.
on site.
So I love those people. But then for you, you've rested a number of things that you've done, and you've moved on to the next thing that you have. And that's something that a lot of people, even my parents, don't feel like it's safe. So when I told my parents I was leaving my good paying job to go to school and for film and then now become a film producer. Like this year, I've not had like a stable job. So my parents are like,
What's he doing?
this one is just, you know, see your brother, they work for bank. Like there's always that safety for it that us as creatives, we do not necessarily have, especially when we're pushing our ambitions. But for you, when do you know that it's time to rest an ambition and move to the next? So, like you've done I Like Girls podcast, you've done journalism, and even like I'm sure that when you left the CNN, how was that like?
For me, I'd been wanting to leave CNN for at least a year before I resigned. But it was that thing that you said, where is my safety net? I'm about to resign to go on. Because my big excuse was what you said about like creative stuff. Like I felt like I had been doing the same thing over and over. And I wanted to make a film. I wanted to make a documentary that didn't fit into, because you know when you work with a company like CNN, the TV shows that we made had their style and format. You couldn't like deviate and try to do something fun and creative because that's not the company style guide. So I felt a bit stifled. Like so it wasn't bad work. It was just sometimes I'm like, can we make these shots like this? Can we? And then you can't because there's a style guide. So I wanted to be able to do those things. And so I was talking myself up for 1 year. And the way it happened was just, I was like, it's now or never. I didn't even tell my husband though. I told him after I had done it because that one was trying to give me reasonable advice. I'm like, why don't you stay for? I was like, no. I just literally called my manager. I was like, it go be, I'm about to resign because you have that 1 month grace period. Even the guy, the way you were surprised, I was like, this is sudden. So I just had to do it so that I would get it over with. Otherwise, I'll be stuck in that cycle. And I just resigned. I didn't even tell my parents until after like 6 months. Because they were asking me CNN related questions. And you know that thing where your parents are proud of you. You know, I'm saying, my daughter, she works at CNN. I'm like, please, I don't work at CNN. I'm like, that was 6 months ago. So it was now like, it was a very hard phase to be in. And the way that I kind of manage with creative work and making money is I try to make creative work that can be seasonal. Like the podcast now. I Like Girls is going to have season 5 when I have money. It's a seasonal podcast. Like that's your business if you want it now. So I try to make sure like it's one-off projects like that or seasonal projects where I can gather time, I can make money, I can get grants. But if it's like telenovela now or something where every time you have to be dropping, I can't. So I think the way me personally I try to manage is establishing that balance. If it's a film, I'll start with short film first. Now I'm writing my feature film, but I know I'm going to pause until I get the money or raise the money to do it. I always do like one-off projects like that, but that's just a me thing. For other people, is they try to, like with what, for example, Fuad now, my husband is trying to do with Vistanium is he's trying to create a business model where you have like a separate money-making entity, like an agency side of the business that can now fuel the creative side. So I guess it's different things for different creatives. Me, I know what works for me, and it's like I will have a full-time job. Then I will now have like side projects, one-offs to fund it until I become passionate enough to now maybe start a full-blown business or to do what you are doing. Because me, Desmond, I've done freelancing in the past and I mean, I don't know if you knew when I was like trying to get a job after leaving CNN. I was doing a lot of freelancing, and it just reminded me of the ghetto days. I'm like, waiting with this, right? Have you ever been in that situation where like you know your worth and you're like, but not me now? Like you'll be talking to yourself like,
And I even think it's harder for people who have gotten to a certain level because
exactly.
you're not like,
Exactly.
like, there was one of my mentors that I really wanted to work with, and then I was like, "Oh, I would like to work with you," and he was like, "There's no Okada for it." When he said there's no Okada, I was
that
like,
is annoying.
I'm like, "What is that?"
Annoying.
Did I ask you for the money? But just
yeah, I know what you mean.
But it's so hard. It's so hard. It's been really hard this year, to be honest, because I chose film. But then we are still pushing. I'm doing a seasonal.
Yeah. See, film is hard. I feel like people see, oh, like Desmond has produced this, like when you're making all those your cool videos on Instagram, but they don't have context of just how difficult it is to get there. And this is not part of the question you asked me, but now it's in my chest, and I have to say this is why I don't like when people shit on creative work. Like somebody has put out a film and then they are just saying bad things. You've seen you don't even know the work that the person has put into this thing. You only saw 2 minute trailer. You're already insulting.
Life savings.
Like, bro, creative work is hard. Me, I'm kinder to creatives now than even before because Desmond. Sorry, I just needed to get that in my chest.
No, and I also think that a lot of us, like even last year when I was still in film school, I was a lot. So you know that new passion that you have, like for a new industry before you get into it. So for me, when we used to do a lot of agency work, and then you do a lot of, I used to critique when the vendor sends in the videos. I'll be the one to be like, this doesn't work, or this is not what we are trying to. My job is to be like, no, it doesn't work. No, it doesn't work. No, but when it was now time for me to start making my own film, so when my film premiered, and then somebody watched the full screen. So me, I'd watched it a number of times because I really want, and I felt like the film was perfect. And then somebody made a video at the premiere and zoomed into Isoke at the end clip. And then Isoka was breathing. Like, there was this 2-second breathe. She was dead at the part, but then she...
Do you think it's easy to die? Do you think it's easy to die?
Why would you zoom in?
Do you think it's easy to die? You to go and die now.
But it's something I would have done. If I promise you, a year before, it's something I would have done. So it made me... Now, when I see things in a film, I'm like...
But you know what? It's bad, but I understand why this happened.
It can happen to anybody. So I'm kind of. So I think that so that happens in the creative space, but I feel like there's also the room for a lot more kindness for creative work.
Of course.
But for a young person now, I think that my youngest brother. When I say my younger brother, his manager could just be like the one at the bank. They'll be like, "Why are you trying to resign?" My youngest brother, he really wants to build something in fashion design.
Oh.
So, but his first official thing, he didn't last 2 months.
Ew.
He left after a few. He just wanted to go. Because he didn't feel that way. But for young people, how do you think that we can stay in work? Because you see a lot of people's LinkedIn and you're saying 10 months, 6 months. Well, if a lot of people from I'm not old, I'm just 28. A lot of the people...
Why do you say it like I'm just 28?
I'm just 28.
I'm just 28. You whispered this.
A lot of the people that I applied with, that I started working with, they had like 5 years experience. They grew with the company. They felt like they had a stake in the company and all of that. But we don't see a lot of that now. We see people who like 6 months, 10 months, 12 months. How can we build... Do you think a culture of like that ownership for a long time for a person, would you advise it? Or when you feel like it's time for you to leave, you move to the next?
Honestly, this is a very hard question because like it depends on so many factors. First of all, personally, like when I see that someone's LinkedIn or resume or whatever, and I'm seeing only 5 months, 6 months, as a manager, someone that is hiring, automatically for me, that's a red flag. Because it's like, if it's a pattern, there's no evidence that you're not going to come to to this company
You're gonna leave in
and
2 months.
and live in 5 months after we have invested resources in training you, or after maybe the smallest minor inconvenience, not major, because major is like, yes, please leave. So it depends on where I'm approaching from. I'm approaching it as the person that is hiring. That's a red flag for me. And I'm going to try to like kind of address it to understand, is it that were you doing internships? Is that why it's like that? Or what's the thing going on? Let's know now. That kind of thing. But as a creative person, so on the other side, I think I can guess why that sometimes happen. I don't always encourage it. I don't like it because it shows, it just shows like a lack of, in some instances, irresponsible, like you're irresponsible in some instances. And I've like kind of worked with people like that where they live at the minor inconvenience. That's when I say minor, I'm not saying the company has, it's stuff like, okay, just for context, there was a, hey God, he's going to know that I'm talking about him. But like when I was doing a particular project, I don't want to say the project. I had this person that I was working with that sometimes I'll give him, like he has deadlines for the work. This boy will come and say, oh, I couldn't finish it today because I was just like, I had a slight panic attack 2 weeks ago. So I did not do the work. In my head, I'm like, me, I had a panic attack yesterday, but I still finished the work. How far? So like there's this, God, I sound toxic. Oh my God. Before they put it on Twitter, toxic bosses. No, but like there's this lack of follow through and lack of communication that a lot of people have. And then like there's that friction between you and your employers. And it's like, yeah, I'm leaving. Because some that kind of situation, I'll be like, please be going actually. Because first of all, you didn't communicate that this is what I'm going through. If you had communicated, maybe I would have tried to find an alternative. Maybe I would have tried to support you so that last the work could be done. So there's the Gen Z-ness problem where it's like, Gen Z people, I rate them and hate them at the same time for it. I rate them that sometimes they don't take nonsense. The nonsense that we took, like things that we put up with, honestly, they won't put up with it. And I'm not mad at that because you know what? Why should anyone suffer and see shege? But at the same time, there's just a lack of follow through that, especially as a filmmaker, you mean you are living at the slightest minor inconvenience, which is every other Tuesday. So are you going to be leaving every set? Are you going to be leaving every newsroom? Like it's just an irritating, like something happened on set. Oh, maybe there's no food, then you are leaving. As how? How many sets do you, like? I'm sorry, I sound toxic. Oh my God, that's one. People are going to watch this and be like, what is wrong with this babe? But like, I don't know. I guess in summary, like what I'm trying to say is that it depends on why people are not staying. Sometimes I understand the reasons, and the last is up to people to investigate what the problem is. Is it that this person was just looking for something and they hasn't found it yet? Was that why he continued or she continued to move? If that's the case, I wouldn't fault people for leaving, and I wouldn't really try to do anything about it because they have not found what they are looking for. It's also for us to make our work conditions like as human as possible, such that people don't feel compelled to leave. But this month, honestly, you just have to do your best and leave the rest. Some people will still live regardless. But I feel like once we have like the right work conditions, especially as creatives, again, nobody, this month, it's vibes. It's okay. It's vibes.
So, we are almost coming to the end of this. But then,
Okay.
this year, I've gotten a lot of no's from a lot of things I really wanted. But the saddest one was when I asked for feedback and they said my application seemed, it was AI generated. And like, I promise you that thing was drafted from my head. I was like,
So as per they say, you use chat GPT.
I was like, So it really hurt me and then put me in a place that I was like, I don't think I should be applying for this anymore. I don't think I should apply for this grant. So I was just like, why? So anytime I'm applying now for stuff, when I say something intelligent, I now drown it in maybe drown it in Nigerian in Nigerian lingo so that
So I
like,
do not feel like it's
this ChatGPT cannot write in this bad English or sometimes. Sometimes when I deliberately use have instead of has, just so that they be like, this person.
No, but then they'll not say this one does not understand
This one does
English.
not, like, it's still.
You can never win.
So how do you think that affects the culture of work now? Especially for you who is at the point that you're also manager level, you're building stuff. hiring talents, and also hiring people to work with or collaborate with. So how do you think that we can
See, this
navigate that?
conversation is funny because this is how we've always been writing normally. It's not all this remember, like, when I don't know if if it's just a meeting, but in primary school, when like even used to be a thing where the person that could use the bigger words, like they'll not say, ah, you are smart, smartest, most, like we've always written like this. It's just with like chat GPT, like AI tools now it's just becoming more suspicious. I think personally, the way that me I approach it is, first of all, using chat GPT. Sorry, I keep mentioning chat GPT because that's the one that like comes to mind as much, but like I approach it as, first of all, it's not a crime. The way that I treat it as a crime when it comes to like applications and doing work is when there is no personality and there's no, it's clear that this person has not even put in the effort. So, for example, it's different if you write your application, you now send it to ChatGPT and say, oh, please, maybe copy edit for grammar or check for flaws, but you've done the work. For me, that is forgivable. But when you now put everything inside ChatGPT and say, okay, do my application, and it's generic, it lacks personality, that is what is unforgivable to me. So I feel like first off, it's now up to the people that are hiring to try to be able to be discerning as to which is which. Because you can't punish someone because you've been getting a flood of AI applications. So me that I did not know, you that you didn't use AI, why are you suffering for what other people are doing? And I personally approach AI as a tool. I think people need to think about it in a different way, where it's a tool that helps you make your work better, not an evil tool that's like, why would I be racking my brain, for example, for grammar checks on an article when ChatGPT can look at it and say, oh, this one is wrong, this one is wrong. So I will not now use ChatGPT because somebody is angry. So like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that for those people that said that they suspected your work was AI generated, it's on them for not being, like, ChatGPT writes a certain way, and there are some pointers that they could have double checked before accusing you of something. So in that context, it's not a you thing, and it makes me kind of sad that you like now feel like you have to dumb down your work that English that you've been speaking since God knows when because of that. Honestly, it's not on you. I think the approach should be on hiring managers or people in general, being more open-minded and realizing that ChatGPT can work as a tool that helps people, and just being discerning from when it has been written from scratch. Because there are many pointers actually. It's not rocket science. But like, it shouldn't be you. But let this month.
Do you so two more questions. Would you advise a work break? Like a year when you're just a
Yes,
gap
now.
year?
Yes, now can't you see what's going on in the land? Everybody's tired. We're mentally exhausted. I would advise it, but it's now
Was
what
there
would
not that fear that people would, so for me it was that fear of that people would forget that I can do
no.
this work?
But also, Desmond, I feel like work breaks already happen when your body forces you. So when you are burnt out, your body will shut down and you have taken the break by force by fire anyway. So it's like, why don't we? I genuinely advise work breaks, especially for creatives like us. We're always working. We're not taking breaks. We're not sleeping. See, now you came here early, momo, on a weekend when you're supposed to be resting and chilling. I would advise work breaks. I know why many people don't. It's like, where will I be getting my bread from in this moment? But like, your body forces you to rest anyway when you pass out, when you are burnt out, when your mental health is in chaos. That rest that you're avoiding, you'll be forced to take it. So I might not advise it for like full year stretch, but it's like, are there little small habits that you can form in between? For example, maybe I try, I'm failing at it, but I try not to work like on the weekends. I try my best. It's a small thing that over time I'll continue to build the habit, and I'm resting. For you, it could be that maybe at 5 p.m., you will close your laptop, you will not open it, you will not open Slack. Like, again, it's this little habit if you can't go on like that full 1 year break. But we need it. It's like one day your body will fail, and that day.
So now we've been critiquing all the time. We've done the things that we said we would not do.
Yeah.
And but then
Hypocritical.
how anxious are you about your first film coming out? Because I can tell you how in my head I thought my first film was perfect. But then when you now zoom in and you open it up for people to have opinions about the film, then you're like, okay, maybe I didn't do the best of the work. But then you're still We see the part in the back that you did something. So how anxious are you about your first film coming out?
Mm, I mean, for starters, I don't think it's perfect. I can see, I don't know if it's a thing, but I can see all the mistakes and where it could have been better. But I can see the ways that I can explain them away. So I'm just like, whatever, you know what I'm like. I am anxious because there's a scene that I know can be way better. But so I'm just that's what's making me anxious. But in general, I think that the message is a good one. The actors, see, they all came correct. Those actors really like they're amazing. Fade Ginikachuku and Timawoyo. So I guess I'm trying to I'm open to it's being critiqued. At least people should tell me now so that when I make the next one, I'll go and, I'll make adjustments. I'm actually open to being critiqued. I feel like I've already spotted all the places that people are going to complain about. So I'm not really, it's like, what do you want to tell me that I don't already know? Unless they are doing what they did, they now zoom into one part where someone is supposed to be. Then I'll say, okay, the makeup here is off. Those kind of things now, yeah. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm usually on the other end. Like, I'm the one that is watching movies and saying, but Nollywood, we can do better than this. So I'm curious to see what that looks like for me. I have thick skin, to be honest, so let's see, Sha.
And I think that every film should be watched on a big screen before it goes out too.
Yes, now. On multiple screens. You watch on your iPad, on your phone, on big screen, on projector. You have to see what it looks like.
If you watch my film on this phone, I'm sure you won't see some of the errors that me I know. But when you now watch it on a plasma TV, you now see some.
Yeah.
When you now watch it at a big, you know.
Yeah. No, you have to watch it everywhere.
You have to. It's one of those.
The sound too. You play it on with regular earphones, with headphones, loud. But see, there's no way that I've not played the sound of this my film. I've no way I've watched it. I watch it on iPad, on phone, on laptop, on big screen, on monitor. It's not me that I'll go and disgrace myself.
So would you be making more short films?
I have one more short film to make, but after that, I think I'm going to try to do a feature and see what that looks like. Because as you know, short films are. What will you do with it commercially? I'm looking for money as well, please. So I have one more short film and then I'm already writing my feature. Let's see what that looks like.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So final.
You said that before.
So what are your personal ambitions in the coming years?
I think first things first, because I have now gone to move into tech and trying to tell stories in that industry. It's the same skills, but it's just a bit overwhelming because all I know is media and journalism. And so you now throw me into, especially fintech. I'm just like, and then like fintech, I'm hearing all these APIs and wait, vulnerability management. What are you talking about? So it's a bit overwhelming because like it's a learning curve, but it's still the same skills, the same way you tell stories in media. It's the same way you tell stories here. It's just like different applications. So it's exciting for me, overwhelming, but exciting. And so in the next couple of years, I want to become I want to build the capacity or the competency to tell stories in multiple industries that aren't just filmmaking, media production, and journalism. Of course, I want to make films. I'm very excited to make one feature film. That's at least maybe in 5 years, let me shall have one feature film. I'm saying 5 years because I know myself, I'm slow with everything. Not everybody can be you this month. So let me do like at least one film under my belt and I will just be making a lot of creative stuff, some TV shows here and there. What I said about like seasonal stuff, I'm going to be doing a lot of things around new creative stuff that I couldn't do when I was bound by media and journalism. So yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, and I do hope it was true value for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This was actually nice. I did not know I needed it to. Yeah. I didn't know I needed to come out and just talk. This was helpful. A good way to start my Saturday, actually.
Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, and subscribe. We are the Good News Naija podcast. My name is Desmond Eboekunwe.